So I'm also really, okay, really passionate about how we kind of disentangle these threads of like, what does it mean to have access to African art? What is art? Um, and again, I'll just come to this slide. That's what this reading group series has been about. What is African arts beyond geographic boundaries imposed on it? Again, some other questions we've been grappling with from the last session or any session if you were able to attend. If it is arts from Africa, then what is Africa? And I focus on childhood studies. So I'm very interested in like, what does it mean to have an African childhood? What does it mean to translate these things to kids or to anybody? And really, really digging into these big questions. Can we think of African arts as a practice, as a theory? So that's what we're on. And let me go back. Our schedule for today, our kind of loose agenda is to just look at the literature. Again, if you're able to have access to these readings, they're really, really insightful. And then we will hear from Somto Ajuluchukwu. Sorry if I mispronounced. And then Isabelle Arvers, and then Garry Yankson. We will then open it up for our panelists to talk to each other and for you all to ask questions, and then we will close out. Any questions? Again, feel free to unmute yourself. This is an interactive space, but first we will show their pre-recorded lectures, and then we will open it up for a more free discussion. These were some of our readings that were provided. I really, really encourage you to take a look at them if you're able to have access. Some of them are open access. Some of them you kind of have to have a subscription through a university or somewhere, which is another part of why we're here. Who is getting access to what kinds of knowledge. But these scholars and artists are dealing with the questions of what does it mean for us as Africans to be able to access, reproduce, be critical of our art. So our first panelist is Somto Ajuluchukwu, and his work is on spirit fiction and original African storytelling genre. So we will hear from him first. Oh, not this loading. My apologies, everyone. Let me stop sharing and just try to play the video in the interest of time. My apologies. Okay.
Hi everyone, my name is Somto Ajuluchukwu, founder of Vortex Corp. Vortex is a creative content company keen on exporting African culture through comic books, animation, and interactive media. We've been in existence since 2015, and it's been our sole purpose to immortalize African storytelling, mythology, and cultures across the continent through comic books and animation in various formats towards the telling of stories for a global audience. Today, I'm going to give a little bit of background into our storytelling, which we call spirit fiction. Spirit fiction is an original genre that we put together in the last 8 years, which has guided and created a format of our storytelling. And it essentially is the use of African religion and spirituality in storytelling, because we believe that spirituality is the common denominating factor across all African cultures. That is to say, when a child is born, it's a spiritual location on the continent, and when that person is getting married, it's a spiritual location, and when that person has his first child, it's a spiritual location, and when that person dies, it's a spiritual location. So the entire lifespan or life cycle, if I would say, of a human is a spiritual process, and that goes through everything, through farming seasons, through the work that we do, through the politics and the monarchy. It's all guided by our spirituality. In certain cultures, like the Igbo culture where I'm from, each person has their own spiritual guide called the Ofo, or in some cases it's called the Chi. And basically that is your spiritual essence that you take through life. So in a nutshell, not to go ahead of myself, I would introduce you more to Vortex and more to spirit fiction. Pardon me if parts of this video gets a bit choppy. Sometimes I might lose my way and try to find my way back, but I hope to inform you the most I can on how spirit fiction is a tool for the African creative industry through the lens of African culture. Our projects span across various regions in the African continent. Starting from Nigeria, of course, we have a project called Land of Gods Ogun, which follows the story of Kashia, a Nigerian American from New York who comes back home to Nigeria for the first time to see her grandmother and falls through this magical mirror called the Ejikigi, into this mythological world of Yoruba deities, which she must find her way back home, only to realize that she is a deity herself. They're projects that cut across Egypt and cultures of the Dogon tribe of Mali, called the Zodiac, which follows a character called Danka that can manifest the Zodiac signs as powers, as he fights against the Egyptian dynasty led by the pharaoh Khufu. There are cultures like, there are projects like the Ojuju, which look into African masquerades and Nigerian masquerades, following the story of Iheme, who's a masquerade that gets buried over 100 years ago and wakes up in modern times, only to find out that the world around him is completely different. And their projects, we tell stories that span across various spaces. A recent project we made was called Six Sister, which we launched at the Nairobi Comic Con in Kenya, created by Kevin Ameyo, a Kenyan creator, which tells the story of Bansini, who is on a mission to save the planet, and the true enemy is this artificial intelligence. So even spirit fiction spans into the future. It doesn't have to be robes and spears and swords and magic. It could be cut across any genre, from romance to action to fantasy to comedy. Spirit fiction basically is just the application of that culture and spirituality in the storytelling, religion, African religion, and yeah, you should totally check out more of our stories on vortex247.com to dive deep into our catalog. and find a story that speaks your truth. A big inspiration behind spirit fiction was to sort of be a counterculture and response to the demonization of African culture. Growing up as a kid, I mean, living in a post-colonial world, we grow up as Christians, right? And we forget our original cultures, pre-colonialism, right? Which was the Ifa religion, which was the Ordinala for the Igbos, pardon that sound, the power just came. And these cultures created our politics, these cultures created our everything, and we sort of have disregarded them and put them in the back burner, and even gone as far as demonizing them in the face of Christianity, in the face of Islam, in the face of all these borrowed religions that came in with the colonial context, which is essentially disregarding who you are to become something else, right? And spirit fiction was important for reclaiming who we are, reclaiming our religion and our mythology and our cultures as our identity. And that was really important for us. And that was sort of the same conversation we had with Kimberly Cleveland of Georgia University in her published book on African futurism. And that's really the context and soul of everything that we make. That before colonialism, there was a people, and we sort of live in this bubble of surrealism where colonialism didn't exist. What would Nigeria be like? What would Africa be like? Just pause for a second and imagine that, if you're from the continent, in Princeton University today, you're originally from Nigeria, you come back home, you know what the context of Lagos City is like, or Enugu, or any of the cities. Now close your eyes and imagine pre-colonialism, if there was no invasion of the British on Nigerian soil, what would our society be like? And that is an inspiring thought, and that has driven us to create spirit fiction. And today, spirit fiction is not just something that belongs to Vortex or something that is published by Vortex. Studios like Symphony Studios are making projects of spirit fiction and acknowledging that they're making spirit fiction. Studios like 47 Comics are doing the same. Studios like Afro Manga in South Africa are doing the same. So we inspired an entire culture. Creators. So it's more than just a spiritual movement or a movement of African Renaissance. It's a cultural movement, a pop cultural movement, where it changes the way we think of things. When you cosplay during Comic-Con, like, give Batman a rest, give Spider-Man a rest, going cosplay looking like a Shia, and also acknowledge that this is not just fantasy, but this is religion that is real, backed by real deities, backed by real entities of spirits, and real guidelines that are practiced till today. I think a really important part of what we've been doing so far is working on the spirit fiction documentary, which has taken us on a journey across the southwest of Nigeria to actually look into what they call Ishe, which is the study of the Orishas. And to break it down, Ishe is the study of it's a Yoruba traditional religion where we worship deities in the likes of Shango, Yemoja, Ogun, Osoksi, Obatala, and a number of them. He also looks into the masquerade culture, the Egungun, and you know, the Ayo Masquerade and so many others. So the culture is vast, and the fantasy that can be derived from those cultures is even more. When you look at the Japanese culture, um, there is so much spirituality that they have turned into the context of stories, which is basically the foundation and backbone of powerhouses like Studio Ghibli, that have put the world of Japanese cartoons on the map, um, on any level that you can imagine in terms of cartooning. I'm talking about like Disney level. So those are really powerful examples. Um, in a nutshell, spirit fiction has become, is the backbone of our organization. Everything else we do is just a process towards creating sustainability and creating value for African creators in an economic context, which is the boring side of the job. Um, but what inspired everything we do today is African culture and our heritage. And that has been coined in these two words called spirit fiction. Um, so thank you, and I'm excited to answer any questions that you may have. I'm excited to dive deep further into the conversation, getting to understand you better, your storytelling, your art philosophy, and sharing mine. And yeah, thank you, and welcome to the Vortex. To dive into more of our stories, there's a platform where you can read all our comic books all day, every day, vortex247.com. And I hope that I've been able to get through. Thank you.
Wow, wow. Vortex247.com. Let me stop sharing and switch over, or I guess I can switch over here. Excellent, excellent, excellent. Thank you, Somto. Please hold all your questions. We are going to, you guys can see all my tabs. We're going to have them at the end. So Somto has provided so much material here. I see Kachua, I see my auntie. Wow. Okay. I think the best thing about these platforms, while we are, a smaller crowd, is that family can join and different people. I think there's just these silos with academia, as we know, and these institutions where we cannot always be in conversation with each other. So I think Somto's work is also highlighting that the spiritual movement doesn't have any boundaries, like those what if questions. What if we had different heroes? What if Japan was in conversation with Africa, with Tanzania, whatever? Those are very critical questions to me. So please stay tuned. We're going to hear from Isabelle Arvers right now, who's going to talk about innovation and games in Africa towards, I can't see it, towards an emerging market. Really, really excellent work from Isabelle. Let's see. Okay.
Hi, I'm Isabelle Arvers. I'm an art and game curator, and I'm currently doing my PhD at the Fine Art Faculty of Lisbon. And I will defend on the 16th of May. It will be online, and you're cordially invited to follow up. Today, I will talk about games in sub-Saharan Africa. This presentation is based on first a text that I wrote with Cecelela, that is now a game producer at Nyamakop, game studio in South Africa, and also a report on the game industry in Africa, written by the game studio Malio from Nigeria. And finally, some extract of my PhD on art and game decolonization. Thanks a lot for your attention. I'm going to share now my screen and start. So I would like to start by the idea of innovation in order to change a bit the narrative. Because when you speak about games or computer games, video games, I will use the word games. In Africa, most of the time, the narrative is that there are no games, that there is not an industry. What we thought with Cité and QB when we co-wrote this article for a book that was published about a new series on video game. It was published last year. We wanted to say that from certain type of constraints, what it creates is innovation. So let's start. So first, I would like to raise the question, how can games serve as a means to reclaim and reshape narratives and to reappropriate stories and representation of ourselves? And before to start my PhD, I did a project. The name is the Art and Game World Tour. Mostly, I went in around 18 countries in the Southern Hemisphere to meet and interview game makers, and with a focus on female, feminist, queer and decolonial practices. And that's from that research, I conducted around 300 interviews, that I started my PhD. And one of the interviews I conducted was with Limfo Dimoeti, who is also a game producer at Nyamakop Studio. And what she said, first, she explained to me the difference between Afrofuturism and African futurism. And also, she also mentioned that she really wanted to change the image that even the diaspora can get from the situation on the sub-Saharan continent, and trying to show that there are like really other narratives and the richness of the culture, and getting far, far beyond Wakandization and.
Sorry, can folks see the video? I'm gonna stop sharing and restart. It sounds like people cannot see the video. Can someone unmute and say if you could see the video?
I could not see the video. I was just getting a gray screen.
Oh no, thank you.
Me neither.
Oh no, the technology is really giving. Thank you. Let me try that again. Okay, my apologies.
Image is up.
Can you see, you can see now?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Okay.
Certain type of movies that were like out in the last few years in the US. So how from technological constraints, these constraints like the lack of power, the lack of broadband internet, how these constraints can lead to innovations. And what is interesting is before to start my journey, it was 5 years ago, I had this idea that most of the countries from the South Hemisphere were more like the third parties and working for the big publishers and the big studio from the United States or from Europe. And what really surprised me is that meanwhile I was doing this journey, the the situation totally changed because thanks to a very, very young population and very keen to consume online entertainment, it totally changed the situation because most of these countries have a very high rate of young population, and they consume so much online entertainment that thanks to this transformation, it allowed a lot of independent game studio to emerge and to start to produce local content, but not only, sometimes also content for the global market, but local content for the local market. And for example, when I was in Ghana, I interviewed one of the first game studio in sub-Saharan Africa, Letiart. So I interviewed Aaron Taiwa, who this studio is he's working a lot on a franchise. The name is Africa's Legends, and they are working a lot to create the game industry. And I will go back to that fact a bit later. So to answer these questions, I will try to answer with 3 different points. First, very shortly, the history and the state of the art of games on the African continent, then how we can use games as a tool for disalienation and reappropriation of history. And finally, I will try to conclude with this idea of innovation in distribution and development in video game as a way to create this emerging market. So to start, if we have to speak about the history of video games in the sub-Saharan Africa, it starts with few studios, or I already mentioned Letiart in Ghana, but there was also like Free Lives in South Africa, and also Kiro's Game in Cameroon, in Central Africa. And then from 2003 to 2013, more studios started to emerge. When I was in Nigeria in 2020, just before the pandemic started, it was just after a little down in the game industry, mostly related to some economic issues. But thanks to the pandemic, if I can say like that, and the different point I already mentioned before, the situation has really changed in the last few years. Right now, we can really say that there are a lot of investment in venture capital, but not only. We know that Netflix is investing, Google is investing, Disney is investing in the game industry in Africa, and more in terms of co-production than like working for. So it's a very different situation in less than 30 years. And then if we get back to the main situation, who are the main actors? I already told you about Letiart with his franchise Africa's Legend, but there is also Kiro's Game, who produced the first game that went abroad, by the way, financed by the diaspora Orion and the Koreadan legacy from Cameroon, and then Malio in Nigeria, who is now becoming really one of the main actors. There is a bit a difference if we think about South Africa, Free Lives, but also Nyamakop produced game that reached the global market, and that was one of their aim. For example, Nyamakop produced the game Semblance. It's a platformer in which you can reshape all the platforms. So their gameplay is really like innovative, and you can also reshape the character. But these games, Broforce for Free Lives or Semblance for Nyamakop, they were really produced for the global market, which is a bit different from the game produced in West Africa or Central Africa that were more intended to the local market, showing the culture of the local culture, with a tiny difference for laitiers, because they are also really keen into Pan-African games and culture. Here is an image of Semblance. In Semblance, all the trees are like portals to get to other levels. And here is an image of Orion, legacy of the Korea Odan, that tries to imagine a world in which colonization never happened. So, just to start, in terms of the constraints and how you can be innovative. If there is one major constraint, it's a lack of support from the government, and also the lack of training in West Africa. It's a bit different in East Africa. For example, in Nairobi, in Kenya, you have like schools, game design schools and game design classes at the university, which is really different from West Africa, where there is a big lack of training. So what was the position of Leti Arts or Malio? They started to train themselves the future generation. So for example, Leti Arts trained more than 500 game developers. Malio, with the support of Google Game Up in Africa, also trained a lot of new game designers with the Art Academy. And finally, with the support of the French Embassy, game studio in France, Maseka Games, and a studio that the name is Kaifo in Dakar. They created the Game Hub, and they trained a lot of people in Unity, for example. Then, when I was in Nairobi, I also met the XR studio, Black Rhino, who have like a lot of initiatives towards younger generation, but also women in terms of training. So XR Without Borders is one of their training, and the Mori Story Lab that is more intended to women game designer or women directors in XR technology. So with this new situation, we can really think about games as a tool of designation and history reappropriation. And for that, the person that was really like telling me about that fact is Mamor Kanji. He's the artistic director of a studio, Amanirenas, in Dakar, in Senegal. And he presented me when I interviewed him in 21 that that game, Langa Buri. So it's a hide and seek game that happens in the island of Gorée, and it's a game about the story of slavery, but from a totally different point of view. And besides Cheikh Anta Diop and all the Africanists, the game is based a lot on stories that his grandmother, who was at that time, I don't know, who was 115 years old and who was able to recall all the histories. So as he said, he wants to use games to rehabilitate history. And even before the colonization, how was Africa, West Africa, before the colonization, but from the point of view of those who lived the history, and not, from the one who wrote the story, but in a very different way. And finally, I will end my presentation about this main core idea that we had with Cité and Cubé when we wrote this article. What is interesting is that from the constraints, how we can innovate and how we can reverse and hack the fact concerning the game industry in sub-Saharan Africa. And I will focus especially on the distribution. I already spoke about the training inside the game studio, but I will then talk about the distribution. And for example, two platforms were created. Gara, which is like a game platform that is trying to get rid of the main like iOS or Android because sometimes it's too expensive, and also it can be Gara or it can be Haha Games. These platforms also try to propose games and technology that are like available when you don't have a very good internet connection. So from the constraints, how you can innovate and get rid of the main, the mainstreams and propose other type of distribution. And it can also like go with other type of phones that are more like created for the local content, but it's one of the examples. Of course, there are all the online payment solutions that also can get inside this innovative way of dealing with game distribution. But I wanted just to highlight this online platform. And excuse me, I just need excuse me. So to conclude, I think that that because of what I already mentioned, the new emerging market, and I think that the last numbers showed that the growth rate of the game industry in the African continent this year was the highest rate with, I think it was like 4.8, and it's the higher rate, of growth in the entire world. So we can really believe that the African continent is a really new emerging market with a lot of potential. And thanks to that, it can really transform the narrative about the game industry, and also and now you can see more and more game studio appearing and trying to change even the way we produce games, because in terms of innovation, I didn't mention that, but there is also the idea of working on the new efficiency of the code to try to develop games in a more sustainable way. The last Green Game Summit just happened in Kenya last February. And Leti Arts or Malio are really part of that movement. And then just to end, what we can say is that we need to enhance the presence of women, because for the moment the game report shows that there are only 10% of women in the game industry on the African continent. So this has to be pushed. Before, Cité and Cube created a website, prosearium.net, that was like trying to show women in the game sectors. But finally, what we can say also is that we have to push co-production, but like well-balanced co-production to produce more games on the continent, but again in a sustainable way. And I will just last word finish by a new project I'm working on with a Brazilian artist. Her name is Livia Diniz. It's the Green Games Pedagogical Kit. And to make it short, it's how we can raise awareness about the environment using games as a medium, and how to change also the demand for different type of games in the young generation. And for this kit, we intend to co-create it and co-produce games. And I do hope we will be able to do it with studios like Leti Arts or Malio, and also like independent game developers like Afran Emakov, who just created a mobile game, the name is Mine, in order to understand what the games, and Afrane is from Kumasi in Ghana, what the games are made of, all the minerals used, and how online entertainment industry is linked to extractive economy. And thank you for your attention.
Okay, there is Isabelle. Merci, merci. Thank you so much. Wow. Okay. So we're going to continue. Can you all still see the screen? I think you can. But there's so much on my heart and on my mind, but I want to keep us moving along. There, just briefly, Isabelle mentioned just the industry, just want to keep that on our minds. And there's a professor in my department here at Rutgers. She's a historian. She always says, follow the money. She's like, Cecelela, just follow the money if you want to really figure it out. And that's kind of what is on my heart with this, is like, how are we, as we contend with like the spiritual movement of our art, also contending with the commodification of the industry, and that it's happening so fast. And Isabelle also mentioned, you know, women in governments needing a place, and we'll ask some questions and have a conversation about that as well afterwards. And then I think she said May 10th or May 14th, she will be defending that dissertation. So thank you, Isabelle. And lastly, we have Garry Yankson, who will be sharing with us about African arts and the creative industries, impact and legacies. I also cannot necessarily see the chats, but I can. People were sharing about the screen. Thank you all so much. I hope folks can see the screen now, and hopefully hear the sound. Uh-oh. Can we hear the sound? This is Garry.
Hello, hi everybody. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you, Maria. Thank you, Princeton. I'm really happy to be part of such a talk on such an important topic. So today's topic is about African arts and the relationship with the museums and the representation and the worldviews. I wanted to talk about it with an angle of impact and of the legacy. So first of all, who am I? Hi everybody again. My name is Garry Yankson. I'm a French entrepreneur with Ghanaian roots, and I'm based in Paris, but I have a special relationship with North America, which was the country that opened the way for me and showed me how to be a proud Afro descendant, thanks to the hip hop culture when I first created my first businesses, all of them. I started first as a dancer, so as a creative. Then I produced dance events, 1, 2, then many more. Then I created indie 360 degrees music label, indie music label, focused on hip hop and Afro music. And then I created a music tech startup before deciding to change my life and sell these companies to start a new chapter, because I was touched by writing my first book, and writing plus consulting for strategic creative projects in France, in Africa, in Europe, and in North America so far. So if you ever have any needs in creative projects and you want to discuss about strategy and how to take your project to the next step, if you're an artist, if you're a small business, or if you're a private or public organizations with a different size. So this is what I do, and I'm really happy about it. I'm focused on business development. Lean management, and of course, marketing, which I also include a lot of human into all of my work. Sorry, because I think that this is very, very important to have, a human approach, and to replace human relationship before transactional relationships. It's basic, I know, but it's so important to me. Rapidement en français, petite partie. Donc aujourd'hui, je suis très content d'être là. Merci Muriel, merci à l'Université de Princeton pour cette invitation. Aujourd'hui, on va parler d'art africain, de la relation avec les musées et des conséquences qu'ils peuvent avoir avec l'overview. Et je voulais rapidement me présenter. Donc voilà, moi c'est Garry Yankson. Je suis consultant spécialisé dans les industries créatives, avec un background dans la culture hip-hop, qui est une culture black creative, qui est directement l'héritage de tout ce berceau-là. Donc voilà pour cette courte présentation, and thank you for listening this French part. I know that we have a French-speaking audience and an English-speaking audience. These are the different brand and organization I've worked with. Some of them in the past few years. So I've worked with incubators, leaders in their markets worldwide, small companies, public organizations, and different networks. But let's talk about creative leaders, because to me, this is what should be discussed when in terms of relationship of museums and between museum and artists, and about African art. So first of all, African art is here for an empowerment, especially these days. And the leaders, they are here to show and encourage this empowerment for our world, for Afro-descendants people, and even for anybody just willing to discover another vision of the world, which is not West-centered, let's say. And I think this is very important to make the world a better place, but I'll talk about it later. If you're okay, just remember that all the artists, they are leaders now, and even before, when they were first created, a mask, a weapon, any type of clothes that were created 100 years ago or thousands years ago was made by leaders, creative souls, innovators. They were here to share the vision of the world, to touch the other, to help them in their everyday work and everyday flow and everyday life. So this is very important, and we should remember it. Like, true leaders today are creatives. And I wanted to share with you examples of a couple of creatives I work with.
All right, I was told that there is some technical difficulties, so I'm going to reshare my whole screen. Thank you for alerting us to that. And the sound, let's see. Okay, I hope this is better now. My apologies.
So this is Raphael Federici. He's an Afro-European living in France. But he's on here. You can see that he has done a huge art piece on the wall in relationship with Art Basel 2018, and it's written "People Save America." So you see that here that guy is actually very colorful because he's a mix of different culture. He's a mix in his texture of skin and of color. He's not white, he's not black, he's everything. And he's fighting for a country to save some values. And I think that the values that Raphael was talking about in accordance to the topic today were around, of course, love, relationships, spirituality, solidarity, and other stuff that are most of time pushed by the cultural creations and in such places like museums. So such an art piece has no place in a museum because it's a huge wall, but it's, if people don't go to museums, we can bring art to people and then create a circle where they're gonna go and visit more exhibitions to discover more of the topics and the voice of these creative leaders sharing and fighting for the empowerment of sensitive part of the population and of people. And here is Sarah piece, which is as well, who is as well, my bad. I do my best to speak English, but sometimes you will probably hear some mistakes here and there, but that's how it is. I don't want to switch into French for the rest of the presentation, but I'm sure you'll get everything. Okay. Well, so here is Sarpis, who is a French artist, and he's a creative working in different areas. But here, what I love and what I wanted to share to you is that he is very inspired by the former and historical type of art from the African culture, which is mixed with other things and with a new vision, with a new approach, with a new pencil, let's say. And I really love it. And I know that he's a guy going a lot into exhibitions, to museums, to, recharge himself with creativity and with will and love and many other stuff that helps him in his work to create new art pieces. And I hope one day he will end in a museum to share more of his vision and to touch the different collectors and the viewers. Legacy. This is all about it with the museums and all the different artists. This was for the newest, but we know that for a long time, African art has been a legacy for our culture, and to understand different culture, between each other. And unfortunately, we had a situation where some persons, and I don't want to make any speculation on the reasons, decided to hide some pieces of art or to, to drag some juice of that art and use it for their own advantage, which is really bad to me, which is really bad to me again. But I think that today we need to change our mindset and to say, all of us, no matter the cultural origins, that art is for everybody. It's made to be seen. It's made to inspire. It's made to touch people. It's made to spread a lot. But it should not be in a box. It should not be used to manipulate. It should not be hidden, you know, and our role here is to make our best to take all these different pieces of art and spread them to the world, but where they first belong. And I know some countries that are not great example with that, and they still have a piece of art that their relatives years and years and years and years ago had stolen from the African people. And this is not okay. So we should just like take that back to museums and fight for that. And I will never stop to speak about for it. And I encourage you to do the same so we can have that and then encourage anybody to go in these countries to discover their legacy, their culture, their heritage, and everything. So, you know, they discover the food, the music, and the art, and what was done before. And this new mindset will help a lot, for sure. So let's dig in, and let's look for collections of art that belong to these different countries, that belong to the wrong persons, if we could say that they are wrong person, bad person, whatever, but they're places where they should not be, and they're hidden to the world. Let's dig in, let's look for them, and let's present them to the world. And if we can, in a context where we know that they will be appreciated with to their right value, right? And encourage, again, empowerment and be aligned with that heritage. That's all I wanted to say. So let's dig in, and to do so, let's go in museums, see the different collections, and some of them are just a part of the collection. So if we know collections, we will see that we have somehow here and there lacking pieces that we could look for in the next decades, and then probably change the mindset and change the world, because this is going to bring an impact, and this is going to make a world better place. I truly believe that. I wrote it in a book that I wrote a few years ago. It's called Be Hip Hop, and it's all about the life of a young Afro-descended Afropean, going from being no one to becoming someone, and trying to, but it's just a story about the quest of identity in a world where there is a dogma, a certain one, which is not focused on African art, and I deeply regret it. So this is why I wrote the book, and I'm sharing my vision of the world and how it should be, and how we should, make a love revolution dedicated to the creative industries, dedicated to creations. And we know that the African people is a very creative people, and that today the hip hop culture, which is the #1 pop culture, was Black created, was from the legacy of the Black people, and moving to Jamaica and jamming there before going to the US in the 70s. So this is why I wrote about it. The cover was made by Raphael Federici that I just talked about. So if you want to read it, it's all in French for now. It's soon, the translation is ready, but I'm looking for the right partners to spread it in North America. So I hope you will be able to read it soon, but for sure, this is going to make the world a better place, and the African voice is very important in terms of creativity and in terms of impact for the future generation. Well, thank you for listening, and I hope to hear more about you. Feel free to reach out anytime. You can go on my website, GarryYankson.com, and make sure that if you speak English, you go on the right corner to select your language in English. Otherwise, it's going to be in French by default. Merci à tous, et je vous invite à visiter mon site si vous avez besoin de rentrer en contact avec moi pour discuter d'autant plus de créativité et faire le lien. Bravo encore à toutes les personnes qui sont à l'origine de cette initiative. Merci Muriel, merci Princeton University. Take care. Bye.
Thank you, Garry. So now we're going to switch to our Q&A session, and I'll probably just stop sharing my screen altogether. And if folks want to say, or Muriel will say some closing remarks after our discussion, we'll do that. And then just want to thank everybody in case people have to hop off. Just say thank you for being here. I'm so, so grateful to see so many different people from different walks of life in the space. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and maybe okay. Oh, hi, Auntie Sifa. Okay, so I have some questions or one question for the panelists to start with, and Auntie Edna. For our panelists, just to open up the space, I'm curious because you all spoke about I was thinking about commodification of different arts. And I was thinking about the role of like government and just how you've been able to, the process of coming to the different art forms that you've come to. And even Isabelle, if you could talk about, I guess, your research and the Africa industry, that impact report that you shared. Like, what is the role of government? Are we depending on government too much to kind of fund these African arts? And maybe just open that up. And if folks have questions, please do share in the chat or unmute yourself. This is an open space.
Thanks. I don't know if you hear me.
Yes, I do.
So let's have more French accent. To try to answer your question, I'm just like an echo of what I heard and what we discussed while I was in West Africa and mostly. What we see is that there is a lack of training, but there is also a lack of investment from the government. And because of that, all game studios are like working on that part themselves, or French or European actors are financing. I mentioned that in Nairobi there is a game design school. It's true, but it's financed by France. It's an emanation of a French school, French design school. It's the same in where else? Again, I saw that also in Benin. They start the art and design school, which is also an emanation of a French design school, is starting game design classes. So when I say, I don't know if it's very important that each government take this part in charge, but maybe it would be better, because when we talk about games, I focus a lot on game for this presentation, but we are really talking about soft power. Right now, I'm in Egypt and I'm in Sinai, and I'm facing Saudi Arabia. So Saudi Arabia in the last 5 years has totally changed their politics in terms of gender, in terms of indie games development and And lately there was like a big fair, a big art fair that was really important, but it's about soft power. So that's maybe a question.
Totally. And I see
Who is financing and who is behind? And I was really interested by the first presentation by Somto. I hope I pronounce well, because I would have loved to meet them when I was in Lagos. But and I would be very curious to know when Vortex 247 was created. Because sorry, I somehow lost my point, but yeah, it's not the situation I saw when I arrived there. Sorry, I lost my point, so I will.
Totally. It's totally fine.
Maybe just to know when it was created, and because yeah. I remember I was just arriving from Brazil, and in Brazil, I interviewed a lot of people working on games related to candomblé. So candomblé is linked to, let's say, voodoo or Yoruba spirituality, but in Brazil. And I learned a lot about orishas and this spirituality through games in Brazil. And when I arrived in Lagos, the only game I could encounter was a game where you fight with the Bible. So I was really surprised, and I know that it has changed because lately there are like few game studios in Lagos that started to work on game related to Yoruba culture. So I have this sensation that the last 5 years were really important in terms of change. But yeah, that's it. I hope I answer your question.
No, that's helpful. It's helpful context from student Dr. Arvers. And I see hands from Garry and so Garry.
Soon.
Yeah.
Of course.
Thank you. Thank you, Cecelela, for giving me the word here. So I'm joining Isabelle here again. There is an issue with the intervention of governments in the education of creatives. And so far, we have a lot of European governments or institutions helping the African market to train their creatives, which is great for the market, infinite. It's great for the creatives, but it's again the same issue why there is an intervention from Europe and from France. And it's a strategy to me for it's a race for investments. And recently there was a program and investments made in Ghana for the publishing industry, in the music publishing industry. And I think that France made it because also China wanted to make it too. And then the Ghanaian government should have done it. And if the government is not doing it, maybe we could like use these different institutional networks internationally and create other relationships to become more and more independent and create new business model thanks to the digital tools and solutions that we have today to train and make like online trainings, online schools, develop this and do it like kind of like a FUBU thing for us by us, which is way more useful, I think. And everybody knows that today the creative industries are very important in terms of link for the society, in terms of economy, and they want to make some moves, but cool, let's take the help, but we should think as well how to protect our own interests, not to see what I was describing in my presentation, some facts of person using our art, our knowledge for other will or for other goals that the one that we wanted to do it at first. So again, like Somto had a great point on it. We had the chance to discuss next to that presentation, and I know that the Vortex Corp has as well a project with some similar educational program, and I think this is key. Ghana and other studios have that too. Many incubators should be created with it and have Afro-descendant speakers or people dedicated to the culture and to empower the creatives and not try to do some politics. And this is just my point. We should not wait for the government. Taking grants and program to make connection is a great thing, but we have so many possibilities today that we should just do it by ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you, Garry. That's I heard you say we shouldn't wait. And I'm also kind of coupling that, I guess, with what I'm feeling is a divide and how to contend with that in real time when there's also like material concerns. So Prince, I see your hand. Go ahead, you can unmute yourself.
Okay, thank you so much for the opportunity. I'm impressed with the presentation from both sides. Because one of the creative industry is one of the foreign that foreign that direct investments in Africa currently. Among also the unemployment, majority are venturing into this content creation. I
Prince, you're
think
breaking up.
fusing it with aspect of reclaim. Okay, I'm saying I'm impressed with the presentations, and it's this content creation is becoming one of the foreign direct investments in Africa currently. That is helping the youth, especially the unemployed ones. So I'm very, very impressed with this. But my concern is how is the diaspora creative personnel are linked with their home counterparts. That's what I want to know, especially for my brother Yankson. How is it linked? How is his connection with home people who are also venturing into the same industry? And how are we going to capitalize on that kind of relations to do the substitution in the monetary aspect in sponsorship as they were given the suggestion? Thank you.
Thank you, Prince. So I heard maybe Garry, you can respond, and Somto if you want to chime in as well. And Isabelle, I see your hand. So I heard like how can diaspora contribute to the content creation and like creating jobs.
Hi, Tomi.
Hi, Somto. Vortex.
Yeah, how's it going? Thank you, Isabelle and Yankson, for the insights, I guess. For Isabelle, I think we started in 2015. That's when we started the company. We're about to be 9 years old. And we've published
Thank you.
we've published a ton of comics between that. We've never ventured into gaming, but we also do make our own animation films as well, based off our comic books. So we're trying to expand in that universe. Towards the topic of government intervention in art, well, you know, you really just kind of need to, the government intervention will plays a significant role. You know, there are a lot of things that we can do on our own, like Yankson said. You know, it's good to start, it's good to, I mean, I've not waited for anybody, but the truth is the government still has a major part to play. For example, if you're trying to do a co-production between two countries, in Nigeria, we don't have a film fund, you know, so as a young filmmaker, there is no place that you can apply to write to get access to funding to make your films, whereby in every other country, they have film funds of some kind, you know, in the rest of the world. You know, so sometimes I need a co-production with another company to apply for their film fund, you know. And sometimes your film fund application can't go very far because you also need to bring funds from your side. So you're more attractive when you have something that you're bringing from your country film fund, and then it's a real co-production. And those co-production treaties between two countries can only be initiated by the government through the Creative Economy Ministry, you know. So the government has a massive role to play. They collect tax for every single movie that shows in the cinema. That money is what usually turns into becoming the film fund. So our money is there, you know, and it's high time that our government is accountable so industries can grow. You know, the animation industry is worth over, you know, $3 billion, you know. It's a massive industry, you know, and it's a content that cuts across to every single demographic. That's why over here, all the way on the continent of Africa, we are consuming anime and reading manga. The language barrier between those two parts of the world are enormous, but that storytelling format has managed to translate between space and time to everyone. And it can do it because stories and cartoons, it doesn't see any color, it doesn't have any language. It is just a story from the human that you can experience from a different perspective. And so there's such an important role for the government in what we do in establishing, even if we want to bring programs, there is no animation to be studied in universities. Everywhere I go, they have animation in the university, but in Nigeria, there is no animation in university. In every West African country that I've traveled, in most of the African countries I've traveled, there's no animation course in university. And if they had that, we'll constantly have a talent base, and with that talent base, that's how you grow circular economy, because studios like ours will have people to employ, and as long as there are people that have a particular skill set, there'll be a demand for their skill sets, and the demand is very high paid. So the animation industry would, rival the cement or the construction business. Because in every other economy, entertainment holds that same space. Entertainment even goes as far as rivaling oil companies. The entire American economy is based off entertainment. Everything they do has entertainment backed in it. And then it's the country with the largest cash flow in the world. So, the government needs to just realize the gold mine that it's sitting on. And if they can pay attention, they can actually empower themselves and not put it in a corner where we need help. We don't need help. We're trying to help them. And once they begin to that way, then everybody's winning, I think.
100%.
I totally agree. Because when we talk about help is always the good friend of exploitation. So it's not help. It's I would rather go for co-creation or collaboration, or because I just wanted to answer quickly to the question of Prince. So about the diaspora, I mentioned before that the game of Orion by Kiru's Game in Cameroon was financed by the diaspora. But there is also a fund, the Black Game Developer Fund, that was initiated by Humble Games. And he's also targeted to support games on the continent. And then there was a question by Muriel asking me if I could mention a game more a board game, and when I was in Ghana, I met a developer. I just remember his first name, Cecelela. His studio's name is Grey Parrot, and he created a mobile game, so you can download it online. And the name is Oware 3D. And what is very interesting in this game is that it deals with the commonly said African game Mancala. But in this Oware 3D, what is super interesting is that he presents all the different games, because this game traveled with the trade routes. So this game traveled all over the world, and you have this game everywhere. You have it in South India, you have it in, I don't know, in Germany. So it's not only what we could call an African game. And in Oware 3D, you can play Mancala, but with the different rules depending on which game you are playing to. So I just wanted to mention that example because it was a question of Muriel.
Thank you.
And I found my question, and again, so I would love to meet you when I was in Lagos. I'm really sad. I didn't get in touch with you because I was really trying to get in touch with like this type of Yoruba culture in digital content. My question or reaction was when you spoke about this post-colonial world, from what I've seen, and we are really in a neo-colonial world, and I think that everything we are speaking about right now is very linked to that fact, and we have to fight to. And I also wanted to mention, but I cannot show anything because it's still like it hasn't been published yet. But the future game of Nyamakop will be about art restitution, will be about getting back the artifacts on the continent. And I'm really, really looking forward their future game. But they have been developing it for like the last 4 years. So, but it will be about artifact restitution from.
Thank you, Isabella. Your comments are making me think about like positionality and access and what is our role as researchers as we are also navigating these kinds of systems, gatekeeping, all of that. So I do hope you all can connect. Feel free to email Muriel and she can hopefully connect you all. We also have 2 questions in the chat and I see my auntie's hand is raised. So the question that came in the chat some minutes ago is about at Indiana University Archives, there's a collection of Senegalese film directors and Semben's personal documents that no institution from Senegal was interested in taking care of. As scholars, what can we do to change this situation? And that's really real. At Rutgers, I'm in Camden. You go to the library, not too many students there. I don't know how much people are reaching out to librarians who are incredibly knowledgeable, helpful. That's why they're there. And they're asking, what can we do to change this? Is there any initiatives from the civil society you know of that are working in this issue of lack of interest from our African governments and raising funds for art restitution projects? And then another question about, is there a way to link with US partners? So maybe that question, and then maybe Antiana's question can be the last question. It's in the interest of time. Yeah, so I've kind of pulled those questions together about, civil society initiatives, African governments. I think we've kind of discussed it, but if there was more that people wanted to discuss regarding maybe government archives, how to change the situation, how to partner with, US entities or things of that nature that hasn't been addressed.
I could just give an example of MMORPG, massively multiplayer role-player game that was produced by a studio that is partly from Ghana and partly from Berlin. And the name is Twin Drums, and they just produced a game. So it's Ouagadougou Chronicles. It's really like imbued with African spirituality, cosmogony, cosmology. In this game, you learn how to worship the spirits, how to heal yourself, how to get leaves, trunk, roots from different trees. Anyway, and this game was partly financed through a US fund, and just trying to find the the name. I will get back to you in a second to give you the right name. And sorry, don't remember.
Yes. Any other panelists want to address that question? Then we can take Auntie Edna's question. And you can go ahead with your question.
I actually don't have a question. I just have a comment. And first, I wanted to thank you, Seche, for moderating such beautiful conversation. I have to confess, I was like, I'm just going to support my baby. So I'll sign in and I'll do my work on the side, but I haven't done any work. I was so captivated by the conversation. So I wanted to say thank you to all the presenters. And I think I'm not an academia, so I'm speaking on the side of an African parent as I listen to the conversation on my role in supporting the arts. You know, as I believe it was Isabelle who said about the women involvement. And I was just thinking in my head before she even said it, while during the presentation, I was thinking the same thing, how hard this is going to be to have women be part of this movement, really, because it is a movement. It has a different face, but it is a movement to liberate the mind, to bring back the culture, you know, to bring back the narrative that has been stolen. And I'm so grateful that you are all doing this work. But I also think there's much more work to do as far as educating people, especially parents, because there's not an encouragement to encourage younger generation to get into this kind of things, because most of us African parents are still stuck on traditional, you gotta be a doctor and you gotta be an engineer. So if your child say, I want to do art, it's like, oh, no way, I will not pay college tuition for that. And I do actually know live examples of people who really wanted to pursue things like art, but even parents couldn't support them to pay tuition for that. And so I think this is a really good conversation, and Seche, bring it up to our African communities, talk to us moms, so you can expand our minds. As I like the money part you guys highlighted. I think it is a good conversation to let people know this is not just crazy people, because that's what Africans view it, that if you're an artist, you're one of those crazy losers. And it would be good also to change that mindset so that we can encourage people to be involved. And I think once the parents or the adults, as we all know who are Africans here, that the adults carry a heavy part of bringing up and making decisions in the society. If the adults can comprehend what this is able to do, we can change the mindset then of our young ones and encourage them to be creative and use it as a way even to make a living, not just draw your pictures and throw them in a trash because they don't amount to anything, but to encourage them that you can be an artist and you can make a difference while make a living. So thank you all. I just wanted to say thank you for presentation. I was very, very happy to be in this presentation. Thank you.
Amen. Thank you, Auntie. That means so much. We all, grew up in Massachusetts together. And while Massachusetts is a very kind of liberal state in the United States, it is really hard to kind of break into these industries, which again can be seen as dangerous, especially for parents, communities. Even in school, it's very kind of bureaucratic. What is the art? How to do the art? So thank you for naming that and for affirming this space. And other comments in the chat, Alicia said, Thank you for an engaging discussion. The conversation to make art accessible and meaningful for all is important. It helps educate people across the globe. History and heritage matter. So just wanted to echo that, and hopefully we can share the recording with permission with some colleagues in the industry. Were there any last kind of pressing questions? I know we could go probably for hours. I see a lot of different people in the audience. And also if Muriel, and I see Isabelle's hand too. I don't know if the hand was just up residually or if Muriel.
Yeah, I tried to get it down.
Okay.
I didn't manage, but just to not to answer, but to echo what you just said. Eram Tyra from Letty Arts just said that we need like success stories to help parents to know that it's not like a dead end, this kind of career, the creative career. And also I was thinking about I was just lately in Brazil because we are starting to launch this new project, the Green Game Pedagogical Kit. And the esports, this kind of tournament of electronic sport, like now you have like very good teams in East Africa, but in Senegal also, and some young people are like making their living thanks to that. In the favela in Rio, there is also a team, and now like some of the kids are like also making money. So yeah, it needs to be spread. I totally agree to change the mind. But this issue is like really worldwide. In Southeast Asia, it's also the same. And anyway, but not the same.
Totally.
Sorry.
Don't worry. I hear like
I
contend.
try to get rid of my hand, but I don't know how to do that.
I wonder if I can do it. There we go. So here, like contending with these forces around developing nations and what to do with that. And even the notion of kind of success stories, developed, I think disentangling that too. I think I'm hesitant with childhood studies. They talk about kind of poster children, using children as these containers of our investments, like containers of our wishes. And that, as adults, we're also growing ourselves. So being careful not to do that. The child is not just a container for our own hopes and desires, but that they're their own kind of social actor, agent, however we want to look at that. But then African childhoods is its own kind of different thing. But thank you all. This has left me with a lot of thoughts and prayers and just excitement for more conversation. And Muriel, I invite you to give us closing remarks.
Yes, so thank you so much for joining us today and participating and contributing to such a productive discussion. We are almost at the end of the seminar series for the academic year 2023-2024, and we are preparing for the next yearly seminar series that will be launched in September 2024. So, but we have still one last event that will be next month, and that is around digital humanities and African arts. And our speaker, Felicity Bodenstein, she's a professor at Sorbonne University and also one of the leader of the Digital Benin project. She's going to share with us some insight about the project and how digital humanities actually helps in building and creating new spaces for African art and also community engaged knowledge production and education. So I invite you all to join us next month for for that last seminar, and then maybe we might have like last meeting together just to enjoy all the discourses, all the progress that we have been able to make throughout all the series that we hosted for this group and research community. So I wish you all a great day and a great weekend, and I hope to see you next month.
Thank you all so much. Have a good weekend, Asanteni-san.
Thank you very much, everyone. That was very, very inspiring.